Hey, there we are. Happy Sunday morning, and welcome to the live version of the show. There's Marco D'Amico.
Can't hear you anymore.
What? Marco's having some audio issues. We're, as far as I could tell, we're live. There's D'Amico. Marco, testing, 1, 2, 3. Marco, testing, 1, 2, 3. See if we could sort this out, but of course, comment in the section if you can hear that we are live right now with Marco D'Amico and yours truly. Thank you so much for being a part of the live stream. Lots of comments already starting to filter in the morning after the Montreal Canadiens went to Toronto and doubled up the Toronto Maple Leafs in a 4-2 final. No? Yes? No? Marco, can you hear me? Okay, at least somebody can hear me. I don't know if Marco can. I hear you. Okay, good. Thank you. We'll see if we could sort this out here. The joys of doing a live show. And of course, I want to introduce you to a brand new sponsor. I can't tell you how overwhelming it is to have the support, not only of you, the viewer, you, the listener, but of course of small family-owned businesses from around. You know, we kept hearing you loud and clear when we had other sponsors on the channel. And it brings me great joy to introduce you to cheapesttshirts.ca. It's a proudly Canadian-owned and trusted company and trusted by thousands of customers from coast to coast. They deliver unbeatable value every day. They have same-day, next-day delivery, so your order arrives fast. Over 1,000 products, more than 36 trusted brands. You can get the cheapest deals in Canada today as cheapesttshirts.ca. Plus, enjoy free shipping on larger orders and a simple, easy-to-use website that makes online ordering a breeze. Marco D'Amico, good morning. Nope. So we'll see if Marco can figure this out or not. In the meantime, we'll try to organize ourselves in a better way here. Not sure what's happening here, but yeah, thank you so much for being with us. Yes, so far so good here as the Montreal Canadiens were able to double up the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it's not lost on me. You know, we talked about this. We talked about this earlier when it comes to icing AHL teams, when it comes to icing NHL rosters versus NHL rosters. You see a little bit of a different landscape. Do we have you now, Marco?
Yeah, thankfully.
Okay. I'm not sure what happened there, but who cares? It's over. You know, we learned this, you know, when the Montreal Canadiens hosted the Toronto Maple Leafs. One of my favorite NHL analysts, Jack Hahn, put this on social media. Show me an NHL roster in the preseason playing an American League roster in the preseason in an NHL game. The NHL roster is likely to lose. We saw this at the Bell Center. We saw it in Toronto on Saturday night, and it's happened to the Maple Leafs twice. Now twice in this preseason. Happened to Montreal. It happened to them in against the Ottawa Senators, and they're back to back. Right? Your impressions, and we'll get to the cuts. We will get to the cuts, but your impressions of the Canadiens' performance on the road in Toronto. We're going to get all your comments on the screen in just a moment. But Lane Hutson looks pretty ready for the start of a new NHL season, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Lane Hutson was always going to hit the ground running after what happened this summer, contract negotiations, trying to prove Team USA wrong. Like, you just expected him to come in, really just kind of lead the pack in terms of defense. And it is incredible to see how the transition and offensive, the offensive strategy just changes when he's on the ice. Like, it's a complete control of pace, and those kinds of dynamic players are few and far between in this league. So Canadiens fans are definitely spoiled when it comes to Lane Hutson. What I would say, and I think where I wanted to bring it to your earlier point, there are a lot more players on the ice for the Montreal Canadiens that had something to prove last night than Toronto. And I think it was very evident with the way that some of the vets were playing defensively. Some other guys, you know, like a Nick Robertson, you kind of expected a little bit more of, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I was kind of looking for, are the guys that are trying to, you know, squeeze themselves a spot in that lineup. But for the Montreal Canadiens, you know, there are a lot of positives that you can get into that you saw last night. And, I think it stems right from the top of what you said when it comes to Lane Hutson. I mean, when you watch him play the last games that he's played, it's just been very convincing.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in. Good morning. Good to see so many familiar faces and new faces. Michael, they played a great game last night, 4-2 over Toronto. Sammy wondering what happened to Kirby Dach. I don't think it was ever in the plans that Dach was going to play back-to-back preseason games.
He's going to play back-to-back.
Yeah, there was no. To me, he's going to play one more preseason game. Do you think he gets into what's left, or? I mean, he's got to play one. He has to play at least once more.
He's got to play at least.
He's
got to play at least one more.
Yeah, and just to see what's happening, because I'll tell you, Marco and I have talked about Zachary Bolduc for a while, and I'm going to tell you another thing before I get into Bolduc. I really like Joe Veleno's game. I liked it before the 4-2 win over Toronto. Like, again, like when the Canadians kind of tell you stuff, we got to pay attention a little bit. And Joe Veleno ticks a lot of boxes in what Jeff Gordon and Ken Hughes and even Martin St. Louis are looking for. And here's a guy with, a little bit of NHL experience. And if he buys into what the Canadians are selling, I mean, to me, he's got a full-time job. And I think it might mean Alex Newhook plays on the wing. So let's talk about Joe Veleno and how much of an inside track do you think this guy has to make the team here?
Yeah, it's always a little difficult when you say make the team, because I'm saying, do you mean the 12 forward spots?
Yeah.
Or do you mean, because the Canadians realistically at this point, with the way that their roster makeup is done, and the way that they're going to probably bring Kirby Dach along, they're probably going to run with 14 forwards to start the season, right? 14 forwards, 7 defensemen, 2 goalies, 23-man roster. They don't have to play cap gymnastics anymore. They've got over $4 million in cap space, so they can play the full 20. They could hold the full 23. So my question then becomes: do I think that Joe Veleno is a lock for consistent opening day minutes? I don't believe so yet. Has he done a lot to get himself into that conversation? Absolutely. And I think you see the skills that made him a first round pick. You see the skills that has kept him in this league for as long as it has, just that speed, he's stronger on the puck, not openly going to crush you against the boards, but not someone who's going to shy away from it. So and again, you talk about checking boxes, left shot, center, not a lot of those pure centers that shoot left on this team. In fact, Alex Newhook, as you pointed out, my honest opinion, is more of a winger.
Yeah.
And then Zachary Bolduc, again, also more of a winger. So those are the only 2 left shooting forwards that could realistically take face-offs for the Canadians. Enter Joe Veleno. And I think that's where the importance lies in doing that. My only concern is I am not convinced that the Canadians are going to go lefty on their third line, right? I think there might be they'd have to play around with that. This is why I don't dislike the combination of Kapanen with those 2 guys. But at the same time, like, you're going to have to test some stuff. If Dach isn't going to play every game, maybe Kapanen goes up to the second line and plays with Demidov and Laine. And, there's even a world where eventually, Zachary Bolduc goes and plays on the second line and Laine plays on the third. And then it's no longer a question of lefty. So there are a lot of combinations still to be made. I think the second and third lines are still works in progress. And that's why, last night's game helps in assessing who could potentially fill those kinds of roles and who could play with who. But I still think that Monday's game, the Quebec City game is going to be excessively important in being able to do some of these final tweaks.
Montreal Canadiens made some roster changes after Toronto's preseason game where the Habs doubled up the Leafs in a 4-2 final there. I always want to try to stay as positive as I possibly can here, but this guy right here, man, this guy right there, highlighted on your screen right now, Joshua Ottawa amongst the first cuts off of Saturday's performance. Riley Kidney, feel like we weren't really talking too much about him. Big man Tyler Thorpe, Jared Davidson, Laurent Dauphin. Really no other surprises. Jacob Fowler, obviously one of the bigger names there. But to summarize Joshua Ottawa, I mean, I don't want to get crazy, but it's a 5th round pick. I don't know how excited I ever was for Joshua Ottawa, but I kind of feel for the kid, man. Like, he tried to do so much work in the offseason. He recognized faults in his game. He tried to make some adjustments to fix those faults. And it's got to be psychologically tough, man, to be a part of the first wave of cuts, considering, Florian Xhekaj wasn't part of that first wave after Saturday. Like, you got something on Joshua Roy today?
I mean, look, I applaud the offseason improvement to his training regimen. Absolutely. Yeah. That is what you need to be a pro at the NHL level and stick there. You really need that work ethic to be top notch. The only thing I got to say is it's the on ice style that hasn't changed. And that to me is the most telling part. Like the reason why the Canadiens are looking at Florian Xhekaj more than Joshua Roy, despite Joshua Roy being a more skilled player, is because he brings more intangibles and he brings more value to the team, because Florian could be played on the penalty kill, could be played on 5-on-5, could play wing, could play center, is a left shot. We just talked about how that's not an abundance in the organization. And is physical, right? So that brings that other element to it as well. So the more layered your game is, the more value you bring to a team. And I think that's why, unfortunately, there's not enough layers in Joshua Roy's game. And, without quoting a Shrek movie here, layers are important when it comes to building out your roster. And this is why you look at a guy like Kapanen. Kapanen's very strong on faceoffs, really good defensively, can follow plays. Saw some nifty little plays that he was making with Zachary Bolduc last night. And so there are elements that you need to bring. And it's unfortunate for Joshua Roy, but I feel like at this point, the Canadiens are sending him a really loud message that it's just not good enough. Hopefully he takes that message to heart and plays very strong in Laval to start, whether that helps the Canadiens get him a call up sooner, whether that makes him more attractive for trades. But I think at a certain point in time, the status quo is just simply not going to work.
From NHL hockey news reports in the comments section, got to see if Roy goes to Laval and tears it up and prove one's wrong, if he can round out that game of his. Like, I get that. I get that take. But who honestly it reminds me of? It reminds me of the great Charles Hudon. This guy was an all-star American Hockey League player, but like some guys, they call them tweeners. The guys who just slot in between, like too good for the AHL, but that jump to the National Hockey League is too big to be left successfully. I mean, are you going to call it? Are we close to calling it that, maybe the harsh reality is Joshua Roy is a tweener?
I still think that there's NHL potential in his game. I just feel like the Canadiens are one of those teams that are just overflowing with middle six style wingers.
Yeah.
Or even bottom six style wingers, right? Like it's just, when you have an Anderson, a Gallagher already occupying your fourth line, that's usually where you get these guys into the lineup. Those those are blocked. You go and get a guy like Zachary Bolduc, Laine the year prior, Demidov just shows up. All of a sudden your winger roles evaporated, and then you figure out what you want to do with Alex Newhook. So you got to displace one of the six wingers I just mentioned to get regular playing time in the NHL. Good luck. You really have to show something different. Hence why Kapanen, Beck, Florian Xhekaj, Sean Farrell still in the game. And unfortunately a guy like Joshua Roy is not.
What's up, Charles? Good morning. Thanks for the compliments. Talk about the Laine, Dach, and Demidov line, right? And, part of me, like going into training camp in my own mind was, I think competition should bring out the most in you, right? Looking over your shoulder, looking at someone on the come up. And if I'm Patrik Laine, I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm watching Zachary Bolduc do his thing. I mean, this young man plays with pace. Again, we talk about players that check boxes. I think for me, Bolduc definitely is one of those players that coaches and managers like to have and like to, not build around, but like to build up. And I think the track is not going to be very long in terms of the internal competition for Patrik Laine, who sometimes thinks he's Cole Caulfield with his one-on-one maneuvers there. I don't think he's going to find another gear come the start of the NHL season. That's my prediction. But what's your read on how Bolduc has performed, and how much pressure he's going to put on the coaching staff to earn his right to get graduated up the lineup here.
Balduc plays the way that Martin St. Louis wants his players to play.
Yeah.
Right. When you play that style, I don't think it's going to take a long time. Right. Like he plays in French, they have an expression called du chien dans le nid. Like he's just mean when he's on the ice. And you love that, right? Like this is a guy that competes every shift, preseason, regular season. Like it doesn't matter. And I think you throw in the offensive abilities, the shot. I mean, some of the shots he was taking last night, like you just saw the strength, the velocity, the release. Like it's a hard shot. Can you imagine him, those legs keeping up with Ivan Demidov and being, left passer to left shooter, putting that spin on that pass and thinking about how that one time from the slot would look like. Like my 2 cents, I think that those two should be on the same line together before we get to Christmas. My 2 cents. Yeah. And then it just becomes a question of who's your number 2 center. That's the way I view it. I get what Martin St. Louis got to do here. You obviously have to see what you have with your veterans first, right? And obviously, with Patrik Laine, he did a lot to help the Canadiens make the playoffs last year. And I don't think the Canadiens are going to make the playoffs this year if he's not firing on all cylinders, at least on the power play. So there's an element where you don't want to rush into something. And obviously with Balduc, new team, new system, new this, new that. You don't want to overwhelm a guy right off the bat. Same thing I think that they had in terms of a strategy with Noah Dobson. Let these guys come in and do their thing, which is why I always have moderately low expectations for new arrivals on an NHL team in preseason. My 2 cents. Yeah. But when it comes to guys that have to prove themselves, expectations are a little higher. And I think that's where a guy like Patrik Laine, to me, who openly came out in the media and confirmed that they were going to see the best version of himself as of this season. Well, again, I'm giving him runway. I'm not about to put him down. I'm just saying that up to date, the amount of unforced errors, the skating strides, the weakness on the edges for me, like I need to see more assertiveness. And look, when he was in the room with us, Patrik Laine on Thursday night, he said it. He's like, people were sleeping this game, including myself. So he wasn't, it's not like he's shying away from it either. He knows he needs to get better. So let's see what happens.
Thanks, Vlad, for the comment. Thank you, everybody, for all the kind words in the chat today. Greatly appreciate it. It's awesome to be back here live on a Sunday morning. Kirby Dach's got to start from the fourth line, not a second line center. If he is, let him prove it. I like Joe Veleno a lot, but I get,
not a second line center.
Well, that's it. If we're subscribing to the Marc Denis rule, right? That he's taught us. I love the Mark. I abide like the Big Lebowski. I abide by the Marc Denis rule of nothing is given, everything is earned when it comes to talking about NHL players. But I guess it could sound a little hypocritical because, whether it's Alex Newhook or Jake Evans or Joe Veleno, to me, you got to see right away. Kirby Dach was drafted where he was drafted. The prospect, the ceiling is still there. The skill, the speed of Kirby Dach is there. I was impressed in his preseason debut with how he moved. I thought he moved well in terms of his stride, his ability to pick up speed. To me, it's going to be here for Kirby Dach. In my opinion, everything's going to be here until he frees himself up and gets comfortable. And Marco, maybe take some contact without getting hurt and going through those motions. Then and only then are we going to see the test. But I think we're wasting time if we're talking about Kirby Dach on a fourth line role, Joe Veleno moving up, or Evans moving up, or Newhook moving up, or whatever the case may be. You gotta start with Kirby Dach. You got to start with Demidov. I have room for debate on if you think Patrik Laine is the guy on October 8th to round out that second line, or Zachary Bolduc is. Personally, I lean Bolduc today. Just my opinion. But Kirby Dach. I mean, we know there's a lot of pressure externally and internally. What did you see from him, and what do you think is going to happen in terms of the threshold of patience here from the coaching staff? Best case, worst case.
They're definitely going to be more patient than some fans, let me tell you.
Oh, that's not.
I'm sorry, guys. Thank you so much, Charles. But I don't mean to say that in a condescending manner. But I see people already throwing in the towel for Kirby Dach, and it's just guys. One thing I've learned in life: especially when it comes to sports, do not judge a player coming back from a serious injury based on his first 5 games.
Exactly.
You want to see how he thinks the game. That's what I'm worried about, because he didn't injure his brain. He injured his knee. So I want to see how he thinks the game. How has his knee injury impacted the way that he engages in contact? How does that impact the way that he attacks open ice? How does it impact the way he attacks tight ice or tries to get into the high danger areas? And so that's what I'm kind of looking at with Kirby Dach. And I think he did that fundamentally. I think he did that well. I think, unfortunately, my 2 cents is I felt like Patrik Laine was the play killer on that line during the game that they played together. And I think 1 game is just simply not enough data for me to make, a very large claim on this player. But what I'm going to say is I would try a different combination to see what could happen, because Patrik Laine and Ivan Demidov skated together all summer, and I saw, outside of that power play goal, no evidence of chemistry between those 2 players at even strength. So to me, that's where, and this isn't a knock on Patrik Laine directly, and I really want to say this. I think Patrik Laine needs to be on a line with a speedster to make up for his lack of overall explosivity and foot speed. I think with Newhook, it would make more sense. A Newhook, Veleno, Newhook, Kapanen, you name it, line with those 2 guys there, where you have a guy like Newhook, who is excellent in terms of offensive zone entries with possession, being able to do that, because every time we saw Patrik Laine attempt to do that over the last 2 games, he lost the puck. So if that's the case, and that's the style, and that's the issue, and Kirby Dach is not at the stage yet where he can take care of those zone entries, and it's a lot to ask of a rookie like Ivan Demidov, well, then maybe that's what forces you to recalibrate lines 2 and 3.
That's Marco D'Amico. I'm Sean Starr. Big thanks to our sponsors. Let's welcome them on board. Cheapesttshirts.ca, littlebearonline.com, and get ready for the live version of D'Amico and Starr coming to McLean's Pub, your go-to establishment on Peel in downtown Montreal. We're going to be doing a live show in October. We're going to do another one in November. We're going to do another one in December. You get to meet Marco D'Amico in person. You get to meet me in person. We get to have some delicious food with great service and screens everywhere, no bad angles. And we got fun. Yes, we have got giveaways. Maybe we've got gift cards. We've got the chance to win a pair of Habs tickets, thanks to the McLeans and their season tickets. We're giving away their tickets. That's what we're going to be doing. So get ready for the live version, live from McLean's Pub on Peel, your go-to establishment for Montreal Canadiens action, home or away at McLean's Pub. I want to talk about, I still want to keep going on the second line for a second, because, I think we've reached a point, right? Like, you talk about, Patrik Laine, where some plays have died in the offensive zone based on his decision-making. Like, to me, I want to put some of that on Coach Martin St. Louis for a second. And look, I'm not in the room. I'm not there in terms of what's being said, what isn't being said. But, and I think I could speak for some fans here. Like, when you watch Laine, you're trying to see a guy who's trying to make a lot of things happen individually when a line mate feeds him the puck. I mean, you got to believe that the coaching staff is watching this, breaking down the film. I mean, you see them, they got iPads all over the bench there. I mean, at one point, it's if Laine is in a one-on-one situation, the move isn't trying to turn someone out or trying to blaze him on the outside like you're Ivan Demidov. It's like carrying him off the half wall, dump it into the corner, let someone win a foot race here. I mean,
who's going to win a foot race on that line?
It's not a young team. This is a team that's turned the corner on a rebuild here. Am I too critical of pointing to the coaching staff and saying, hey, maybe ask Laine to do something else with the puck to keep momentum in the offensive zone going?
Yeah, I think that goes into chemistry. I think that goes into practicing. I think that goes into also introspection when it comes to the player as well, like having to modify his game. Like, Patrik Laine, when he came into the league, was big, had really good edge work, was shifty. Thank you, John. Was shifty, he was able to get away with a lot of the warts in his game. Whereas now, because of the knee injuries, that level of mobility is no longer there. And so you have to modify or at least tweak your game. And I feel like that's kind of the thing right now, where this is on Martin St. Louis to help this player tweak his game. And look, I'll give a direct example of a player who's tweaked his game. Fans may not necessarily think that this means anything, and I agree with you. It's a small victory. But if you look at the way that Alex Newhook's game has gone from being like this offensive style player, which he was in the NCAA, he's more of a well-rounded two-way player that they're going to start using on the PK as well, and that they want on their third line, be it at center or wing, to help kind of drive possession and also match up against the opposition's top lines, because they can't keep putting Suzuki's line against top lines. They're going to burn those guys out this season. So I like that he's kind of reinventing himself in that sense, and getting a different role on the team, a role that will see him stick around, for example, when you have all the influx of other players that will be coming in. So I'd like to see the same thing happen with Patrik Laine. I'm not saying turning him into a defensive specialist, no way, shape, or form, but at least make him more comfortable in the neutral zone, so that he's using an active stick. He's cutting off passing lanes. He's using his big frame to take up space and box guys out. You don't necessarily have to crunch the guy, but at least if, Patrik Laine, he's playing on the left wing and Lane Hutson's behind him at the blue line, you're able to box a guy out so that Lane Hutson can come in quickly with the puck takeaway and start a counterattack. It's just that kind of smart element that you would require from a winger playing in that kind of a role. So that's on coaching. I agree with you. Martin St. Louis, this is the difference. And I say this with respect to the man, because he has shown some really fun things, but this is going to be the difference between a coach that could coach a rebuilding team and a coach that can coach a competitive team. And I think, again, I'm going to give him all the runway in the world. He's proven that he can help players elevate their games in certain areas. Let's see what happens here.
We're obviously getting close to October the 8th and the start of a brand new regular season for the Canadiens. They have 2 preseason games left, Tuesday and Saturday, both against the Ottawa Senators, and then they're going to have a little bit of a break, and then we get into the back-to-back in Toronto at Chicago, right? And we're off to the races with the brand new Montreal Canadiens season. And look, there are a lot of good problems that need to be solved here between now and the October the 8th start of a regular season. And look, I mean, the first line to me has all the markings of being a dominant first line in the NHL. This is the first time where I can really look at the combination of Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Juraj Slafkovsky. And I'm not saying like on the juggernaut teams, but all 3 of those guys are legitimate first line players in my opinion, right? The second line still has a question mark on it. I love the line of Jake Evans, Josh Anderson, and Brendan Gallagher. To me, that line is locked in my opinion, right? The goaltending is locked in. Let's spend a couple of minutes on Owen Beck versus Oliver Kapanen. And, my quick observation is Oliver Kapanen looks like the more polished player, and I think we know why. Owen Beck, though, still comes across as the guy that has to me right now, has the higher ceiling, while not as polished. But I think Owen Beck breaks camp with the Montreal Canadiens. I think this is a player that checks a lot of boxes, and I think he has better scoring potential than Oliver Kapanen. So why don't you walk me through the Kapanen Beck, and which way do you think the Canadiens lean today?
I think Kapanen is a better offensive player today. I think that he hasn't necessarily shown that he's the best offensive player today. I think Owen Beck has outworked Oliver Kapanen, and I think that that's exactly what the Montreal Canadiens want to see. Owen Beck added a couple of elements to his game I found during the AHL playoffs. Pascal Vincent and I spoke about this at length last spring, but that physicality in his game, like he isn't the biggest guy at 6 foot, 6'1", depending on who you want to trust, but he I was in the elevator with him on Thursday. And, I remember him at his draft in Montreal in 2022 and where he is now. He's a big boy now. Like he's put in the work, in my honest opinion. And I don't think you're ever going to have to question his work ethic. Not that I question Kapanen's work ethic, but where I think he is a better fit for this team is that ultimately speaking, he can play wing, he can play center. He is strong on the faceoffs, can take draws on both sides, no problem. Doesn't have to play on his strong side. He could take draws on both ends. He could play on your penalty kill right off the bat. And he's also a guy that you can put on the second wave of the power play if you want to win an actual faceoff, because I don't know that Kirby Dach is your centerman on that second wave is going to allow you to start with possession very often. So
yeah,
there's a lot of boxes that he checks, but the same things that I just said outside of the physicality, so too does Oliver Kapanen. And I was very much leaning Owen Beck prior to Saturday, and I felt like Oliver Kapanen had himself a good enough game on Saturday with Baldzuk and Newhook, hit a post, did some really nice plays with Baldzuk I found in tight, really good in transition, so that, maybe it's a little bit more on an even playing field. And I know I don't necessarily see the comments, but I'm sure there's going to be questions about, well, what about Florian Xhekaj? I agree there too. I thought he's been great as well. I will say, however, from what I know, the Montreal Canadiens want to see him develop his offensive game in Laval more. They're going to keep him around as long as possible.
Yeah.
But don't be surprised if he's cut. I think we're really talking about, in terms of like the centers here, I think we're really talking about Veleno, Beck, Kapanen. And I think it'll go from there.
And again, to your point, like 2 preseason games left, the Montreal Canadiens made a batch of cuts after the 4-2 win in Toronto last night. As you see on your screen here from the forward position on the left side, Jared Davidson, Riley Kidney, Philip Meshar, Joshua Ottawa, Tyler Thorpe, Luke Tuck. Defenseman of note, as you go down the list, Jacob Fowler, to no one's surprise, right? Not an indictment on how the organization sees him, but the name that wasn't there was Florian Xhekaj. And I think you're right. I think your point of view is probably the way the team is leaning. 24 goals in the AHL. Let's see in a high-profile role, more minutes, tougher opposition. Let's see what Florian Xhekaj could do, which takes me to Joe Veleno, who I've been impressed with since camp. Professional player, right? Like in my mind, when I walked you through what I think are more or less check boxes in the first line, the Anderson line with Jake Evans and Gallagher, I like the possibility, and I think the second line is going to start the season with Laine, Dach, and Demidov. Yeah. I could totally see a world that exists, and I put my hand up because I like it. Joe Veleno down the middle, you got Alex Newhook, and you got Zachary Baldzuk. I mean, that line's got grit, it's got scoring, it's got experience. I really like the complexion of that line. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that's something we're talking about going into Toronto on October the 8th.
I don't know that the Canadiens are fond of having players in the same line that shoot all the same side.
Yeah.
I think they're already doing it on the fourth line, right? I believe Anderson's a right shot, Gallagher's a right shot, and Evans is a right shot. Now, you don't want your other bottom 6 line to be left as well, right? You want some diversity, especially if you want to win, if you want to use it as a shutdown line, right? I think that's why I think Kapanen or a Beck fits better there, because Newhook or Baldzuk can take the left shot faceoffs, and then Kapanen or Beck can take the right shot faceoffs, right? And I think there's value there. Plus, they bring elements of their own game, and you have a Veleno that you can kind of slot in, because I don't necessarily know that Kirby Dach is going to be playing every single game right off the hop this season. I think they're going to bring him along like they did Reinbacher, where it's especially when you have these back-to-backs, he may play the opener, but he doesn't play in Detroit. He may play in Chicago, and then he may play the home opener, but the next home and home, maybe he skips, and so on and so forth. So it's more to that. And the fact that the schedule is so bumpy right off the bat in October, I think the Canadiens are going to want to use that versatility to their advantage. So I don't think there's shame in saying that 2 of Kapanen and Beck and Veleno are going to make this team, but they may not all be on the starting lineup. Yeah. You are going to have a 13th and 14th forward, and Sammy Blais is also in that conversation. So Sean Farrell. So a lot of options there. The only thing is, I don't think, for example, a Florian Xhekaj would ever be kept along as an extra when he could be playing guaranteed top 6 minutes in all situations in Laval. So it's that you got to take into consideration. Yes, he may look like really cool and really fun now and the exact kind of player that the Canadiens need, but is playing with the Canadiens exactly what Florian Xhekaj needs?
Right.
Or do you want him to be more than just a fourth line banger? So that's the decision going on right now.
Well, you want to at least give him more reps to have him answer that question. Is he going to be a fourth line banger, or can he be a player that fulfills maybe a larger role? No disrespect to fourth line bangers; those are tough jobs, right? But when we talk about the Joe Velenos of the world, debating between Oliver Kapanen and Owen Beck, I think we also have to think about, the absence of a Yoel Armia or a Christian Dvorak in terms of shorthanded minutes. And that's why, Joe Veleno versus Samuel Blais, I think it's Joe Veleno. I think Joe Veleno can play hard minutes on the PK, brings that, professional repetition to his resume. And I even think Owen Beck is more suited shorthanded than Oliver Kapanen. What it's about making a well-rounded decision, as opposed to, like, the Canadiens aren't just looking this through one lens, offense, right? It's about who can make our team deeper and more well-rounded, right?
Yeah, Martin St. Louis actually had a really good quote on this when we asked him earlier this week, but he said, we want guys to be able to fill roles while playing their game.
Yeah.
And to anybody who is confused by that statement, because it doesn't mean a damn thing to them, I 100% agree. We asked him for a little bit more information after he said that. But basically what he's trying to say is, I need to see a player that could bring value in the position that he plays while playing his game. So what that means is you need to have a role on that team. You can't just be a tweener playing on the third, right? Like you either are going to be on the power play, on the penalty kill, or both. And I think that's the key right now, right? You really need to develop that, because that fourth line, Evans is probably going to play on the PK. Anderson's probably going to play on the PK. Gallagher seemingly is going to play on the power play. Not my call on that one. Love the man, but maybe not the best option in the net front situation that he's in. So you look at a Kapanen. Kapanen can play on the power play. Kapanen can play on the penalty kill. Same thing applies to Owen Beck. So Veleno, I think, could play. Again, like we talked about on the penalty kill, maybe on the power play. I think they need diversity on that power play. They need to have at least two guys that can win draws. So it's interesting and it's going to be fun, but I still think that the next two games are going to be paramount to being able to really filter out the last two guys that are not going to make the team.
Well, that's it too, right? It's like, we could talk about the cuts that were made after Saturday's preseason win. The Canadiens have 2 preseason games left before the October 8th start of a regular season in Toronto. I think we can read into Arber Xhekaj having an A on a sweater. Glad to see his I love the reaction from the Xhekaj's mom. I mean, she is so hard in their corner. I'm a sucker for it. I love to see it. And he gets the A on his sweater in Toronto. I mean, it's more like more affirmation that he's got the inside track over Jaden Struble. Impressed with what you've seen from Arber Xhekaj in the preseason so far, despite the that penalty he got. Was it against the Flyers there?
I think that penalty was more than fine. Martin St. Louis even brushed it off. He's like, I'd rather they take these penalties now than in the season when it's 3-3 and there's 5 minutes left in the third. That's when I lose my marbles. He said, well, I mean, he didn't use the word marbles, but I'll let you determine what he said. When it comes to Xhekaj, like, listen, I thought overall he's had a strong camp. I wasn't a big fan of that giveaway against the Toronto Maple Leafs that led to the first goal. I thought corralling along the boards is the way, and you're taught as a young defenseman to never kind of try to clear the puck out from the middle. Always try to go to the extremities, right? And yes, there was a little bit of pressure, and that's what I really want to see Xhekaj work on, is his play under pressure. Because if you're going to play an important role in the playoffs, pressure is ubiquitous, universal. It's always going to be there. So you got to be able to be able to answer that. I thought he did well, because obviously that play with Robertson I thought was strong and was able to get the puck out, and then unfortunately just did not work out. Otherwise, I thought he played a very sound game. I thought, I think one of the things you see is the weight drop in his case allows him to cover ice so much quicker. And if for a 6'4" guy, like, having that extra gear, you're able to cover ice on a horizontal level in such a degree that his chemistry with Alex Carrier, the two of them feed off each other so well. And it's not so much what Arber Xhekaj does necessarily, but the confidence in leaving Arber Xhekaj back. I don't know if fans notice this, but Alex Carrier has been taking more and more offensive risks, right? Being a guy high, close to the blue, waiting for the pass, doing the zone entry. A defenseman that's normally seen as a more defensive defenseman, being a little bit more adventurous in the offensive zone because of that, and playing the puck and being going up in the play. We saw it on the first goal, right? And when it came to Alex Newhook's goal, that was Alex Carrier playing higher up on the play because Arber Xhekaj had things locked down defensively. So I like that combination. And I feel like because of that, Arber Xhekaj really has kind of a leg up on Jaden Struble. And again, we talked about being able to play a role that is different than anybody else in that core, be it forward core, defensive core. Well, Arber Xhekaj brings that level of physicality and corner board play that I don't think any other defenseman right now does. And so you really need that kind of element, because when it's going to come time to be playing difficult games in March and April after the Olympics, you're going to want a guy like that that's going to be ready to be pushing guys around.
Lots of comments. Thank you for the participation in the stream today. Make sure you like our video today. Just helps push us along. And of course, the march to 20,000 subscribers begins with you. You guys have been with us since day one. Lots of comments on Adam Engstrom, who I want to talk about here. Charles writing about him. Our boy fuck sakes here, as you can see with the little logo. Proud member of the show, $2.99 a month, and you can cancel anytime. ML on Engstrom, looking good, smooth skater, says Charles, right? And lots more in terms of, a young defenseman trying to make his way. Let me say this, I think Engstrom needs more time in the American Hockey League, but yeah, I wonder about David Reinbacher's latest injury, the broken bone in the hand, sidelines him for 4 weeks. The good news is, I suppose if you want to put it that way, it's not something that's going to lead to chronic ailment for David Reinbacher. It's going to heal and he should be more or less good to go. But what does this injury do to Adam Engstrom and his role for Pascal Vincent? The Laval Rocket opened up training camp on Tuesday, by the way. So what does this do, in your opinion, to Engstrom and his utilization for the Rocket now?
I don't think it really changes much, but I do find it interesting the Canadiens keep trying him on his offside. He has been playing right during training camp for a reason. He used to play right in Sweden. And so, watching that, that versatility again, being able to fill a role, we've been talking about this. Pascal Vincent once told me when I talked to him about Adam Engstrom, he's like, we still haven't figured out where his ceiling is. Every time we think he's something, he breaks through it, and so on and so on and so forth. The belief within the organization is that Adam Engstrom has legitimate NHL potential, to the point where potentially he could fill a top 4 role in the best cases of scenario should he continue his development. That's what I've been told. Now, they don't think he's ready for that yet. And I don't think it would do him any justice to keep him on, on this team as a 7th defenseman and being forced to waive a guy like Jaden Struble. I don't think that makes sense. So I think the writing's on the wall. I think we all know who the 7 defensemen for this team are going to be. And it's just about bringing guys along and keeping them in the group in case there are injuries. And then they're not, fish out of water when they get called up and have to play a game for the Canadiens, So it's more of that. And I feel like a guy like Adam Engstrom, if you look at his development year over year, he looks more polished now playing on his offside than he did last year playing on his actual side. And it really comes to the ability to move the puck up with possession. I think that's a skill in the NHL that if you can master, you already have 1 foot in the door as a defenseman. If you are able to calm the play through your skating alone, then you are able to control the puck more often than the opposition. And I think that is a key skill that helps you push the pace of the game forward. You're not usually going backwards unless you're trying to calm the ice or, ward off a forechecker, but you are able to bring the puck up through the defensive zone, through the neutral zone, into the offensive zone, and sustain offensive zone pressure. And that kind of a skill Adam Engstrom has already mastered at the pro level. Now it's about gap control. Now it's about board play. Now it's about active stick, playing man to man, having the wherewithal to know where to position yourself, fighting in front of the net. These are all things you learn as a European defenseman as you play more and more repetitions in the American Hockey League. Pascal Vincent views him as a top pair kind of option for them this season. And I think with or without David Reinbacher, he was destined for that to begin with. So I don't see a problem with that. I think it'll work well.
What do you make of this?
I don't necessarily think that there is going to be many trades in that regard.
No.
I really, really don't. And the reason I say this is because if Jason Dickinson is available, more than just the Montreal Canadiens are going to be in on that. The market for centers is so bone dry, you would think it's a desert. And thank you, Angela. Us too.
Yes.
You would think it's a desert. It is just barren. And I know, like, we spent all summer talking about Mason McTavish. That was never going to happen. Oh my God, Jesus. Okay. Asking you shall receive. We can actually talk about this if you want, because I do have some information in that regard. But there are no centers available right now because no teams are going to trade them until they throw in the towel on their season.
Exactly. Yeah.
There were none traded this summer. There are none that are going to be traded now. You may see some tweeners picked up on waivers, though. That's something to watch over the next week.
Well, yeah. So let's tie that in, right? Because we're going to dive into the waivers in a future episode. So make sure you set your notifications on your YouTube channel or download the audio on all your favorite audio podcast platforms, because everything you kind of see on youtube.com with us will be up for listening in your car, on your walks, whatever the case may be, in just pure audio form, right? But the Canadiens are going to have decisions to make. People like Capo Kakinen's game in Toronto last night. We could talk about Sean Farrell.
Yep.
I mean,
Sean Farrell to me is the one. Sean Farrell to me is the one you got to worry about.
How big? Yeah, but how much though? Like, what's the risk? Like, big risk? Like, guaranteed claim? Like, to the maximum?
I thought he had a great game last night, and I thought he had a good first game as well. But like, you see, he's a small player, obviously, and that's going to be held against him when you're a team like the Montreal Canadiens that already has Lane Hudson, Cole Caulfield, Brendan Gallagher, right?
Right.
I get that. Right. And you just drafted LJ Mooney, who is a beaut. So you got to make a decision here. And I think he's got NHL potential, but does he have NHL potential with the Canadiens the way that they're built now and what they need in their lineup to round it out? And so I think that's the problem. But you look at other teams, right? You look at a team that is hungry to influx some youth into their lineup because they have an aging core. You look at the Nashville Predators, you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, you look at those kinds of teams that are going to have to start turning the corner and create kind of a youth movement. A guy like Sean Farrell, who outside of his first 20 games in the AHL last year was one of the best players in the American Hockey League, bar none. It's an attractive proposition, especially with the salary that he has. It's no risk. You bring him in, you see what you got, right? For those teams, that makes all the world of a difference. And for a guy like Sean Farrell, it's a legitimate NHL opportunity. So that's why the Canadiens, for example, are going to probably take their time with him. They're going to make it. First of all, they're going to see whether or not he can get to the point where it makes it interesting from an NHL perspective. I personally think that he has the talent, but maybe doesn't have the rest of the layers in his game, like we talked about before, to hold down a consistent spot. But I feel like the Canadiens value him enough and are putting him in a position to showcase himself enough that may let him be, very much in the binoculars of certain teams for a waiver wire pickup. So it's all going to depend on the strategy, right? Because with a guy like Farrell, for example, if you were to put him on waivers at the same time as other teams put some of their big names on waivers, well, I don't think that you're going to see a lot of the smaller, the lower team ranked teams throw multiple waiver claims day after day, right? They may pick their spots with one or two or three, and that may allow the Canadiens to sneak him into the American Hockey League. It all depends on that, and it all depends on how he performs the next couple of games. But I think it's undeniable that he has been one of the better prospects for the Montreal Canadiens to play in training camp this year. And I think he understands that time is of the essence.
Yeah. Am I overly concerned about the goalie position at the American Hockey League level? Like, I agree with this comment, right, from John. Kakinen was okay, AHL goaltender. I don't think anyone here is arguing that Kakinen is fighting with Dobesh for the right to back up Sam Montembeault. But to me, when we talk about development, like, I'm all about pressure. I like pressure. And I think Jacob Fowler is going to have some pressure to live up to expectations, to be, a great professional goaltender as he attempts to blaze his path to the National Hockey League one day. But what's so wrong with having a pretty good AHL goaltender who went on a deep run with the Charlotte Checkers a year ago in the AHL playoffs to back up Jacob Fowler, who's going to be the presumptive number one guy for Pascal Vincent, but How hot is the goalie market, like in terms of the risk of Kakkonen's not going to break camp as a Canadian. So when they cut him, he's going to go on waivers. How big of a hurt would it be internally for the organization where John Sedgwick, the general manager in Laval, is going to have to react to filling the role of a veteran goaltender in Laval? So what do you think about the likeliness that Kapanen clears waivers? And what if he doesn't? How impactful is that going to be?
Yeah, it's a difficult task to be able to project. I think the issue at hand is I don't think this has anything to do with Kakkonen himself. I think this is all about Jacob Fowler's development. And the Canadiens basically left Jakub Dobeš to his own devices when he came in as a rookie in the AHL, right? Like he had no veteran backup. He played, I think, north of 50. I think it was 53 games, which is an AHL record, by the way, for goalies in terms of the amount of games they played. So just to say, and I just don't feel like he was well surrounded until the tail end of the season when they finally brought a veteran backup to back him up, right?
Right.
And so I think in this case, because they want to avoid that kind of situation and they want to give someone for Fowler to lean on that has, many seasons under his belt professionally, you want a guy like Kakkonen, especially when you factor in that the AHL very much condensed schedule, right? A lot of back-to-backs, Friday, Saturday games, right? So you don't want to play Fowler 2 games in a row necessarily, unless of course it is crazy. Yeah. Yes. Players cut do have to go through waivers. Those players that you mentioned do have to go through waivers, and there's more as well.
Yes. And we're talking about Kakkonen and waivers Clerman, right now.
But Kakkonen, is a little bit more specific because the Canadiens only have 4 goalies under contract. Right. So, for example, if they were to lose Kakkonen, then they would have no choice but to call up Jacob Fowler, who they want to leave alone in the American Hockey League all year, except for maybe a call up here or there, like just as a candy. They want to leave him down there for as long as possible to simmer and get consistent minutes and grow, because they see future number 1 goaltender, potential superstar in him. Right. And so if that's the case and that's the way you see him, you really want to leave him alone, because we've seen the Canadiens get antsy about goalies and give them the reins a little early before, right?
Yeah.
Carey Price's career was almost ruined because, Bob Gainey decided to bring him up as a 20-year-old and give him the reins as a number 1 goaltender. Yes, he did well in his rookie season, but he didn't have a veteran backup to properly allow, to properly help him, right? It was him and Halak, right? So 2 young guys trying to figure it out at the same time, not necessarily ideal. Canadians were like that with Caden Primo, where they threw him to the wolves a lot, right? Where he wasn't properly brought along. Well, I think it's the same thing here with Jacob Fowler. So Kakkonen's availability is important. What I will say is there are a lot of other goaltenders in the NHL right now, 3rd-string goaltenders that are catching people's attention. Mikey DiPietro in Boston has been the talk for a long time of a potential waiver claim because Boston eventually is going to have to make a decision on who backs up Swayman, and that goalie that loses that fight could potentially be a waiver claim, right? So there are a couple of teams that the Los Angeles Kings are going to have to go through the same kind of scenario as well. A couple of teams in the NHL. So I feel like Kakkonen, as some people said, hasn't necessarily lit the league on fire with his play. I think could probably pass if put on waivers at the right moment.
I want to put this comment up on the screen because I think it's an interesting discussion, at least in my mind anyway. Talking about Patrik Laine, right? In Hendrick's point of view, flat in the preseason. People suggesting that maybe he's not ready to play with Demidov or shouldn't. Trade value. I'm going to tell you something right now. Montreal Canadiens today, into October, into November. Let's rehash this in December, depending on where the Canadiens are in the standings. Patrik Laine is, to me, as much as I don't like his one-on-one play or the lack of foot speed, the Montreal Canadiens will not make the playoffs if they don't have Patrik Laine. This guy has one of the most electrifying shots in the National Hockey League today. He was on more or less a 30-some-odd goal pace a year ago, 40-goal pace with the Montreal Canadiens. He is the trigger man on the power play. There's going to be magic with Lane Hudson and Noah Dobson and Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and Demidov. You already saw Demidov on Laine with the Magic in a preseason game already this year. To me, everything hinges on, and I get Laine's in a contract year, everything hinges on the Canadiens' competitive balance into what we think is going to be the trading period in December about Patrik Laine's future. But there's no way. Shoot it down. There's no way Patrik Laine, I don't even want to talk about his value, because his value means more to the Canadiens than it does to any other team in the league, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the Canadiens, first of all, if they trade Patrik Laine, would probably have to retain salary. I mean, like, what's the point at that point? And it's not like the Canadiens are dying for cap space anymore. They have $4.5 million today, and that continues to accrue. So that'll just become $9 million by January. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I don't think it's necessary. I understand people's frustrations with him. And I understand the comment. He said that he was going to be better this season, but this season hasn't started.
Right.
And so I get the frustrations, because you want to see guys that have stuff to prove them in the preseason. Yeah. Veterans don't think that way. Like Patrik Laine and Mike Matheson were in the room with us, and basically like Marshawn lynched us. Like I'm only here so I don't get fined. Like I'm just like, we're just going through it right now. Like the things are going to get serious next week when they start playing against closer to NHL rosters, right? And that's really where you want to give yourself. Where I'm with fans is, if you play that lackadaisical during the regular season, or sorry, during the preseason, you also open yourself up to potential injuries, right?
That's fair.
And I think that's kind of like we saw with Noah Dobson. Caden Gooley's injured. Just so fans know, like they're expected to at least play another game this preseason. So like, don't ring the bells yet. Yeah. A groin injury, 7 to 10 days should be fine. When it comes to Patrik Laine, I think that it's all about the utilization. He could be used on the third line as long as he's getting you power play goals. Then he's doing his thing. Like the Canadiens didn't trade for Patrik Laine because he had a value contract. They traded for him because they had the luxury of having cap space, or at least with LTIR at the time, LTIR space, to be able to absorb that contract without having to pay for it. In fact, they got paid for it. And so you factor that in. That's what he's there for. Now, whether or not he re-signs with the Canadiens all depends on his play this season. And I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, it's a contract year for Patrik Laine.
Amen, brother.
That he's not giving it in the preseason is fine, but it's a contract year for Patrik Laine. And I think he likes making $8 million plus. So I think there's going to be there is a gear that switches for veterans when the season starts. And I just want to bring that for fans. It's full throttle all the time. Your team is on the ice. There's a Canadiens jersey. You want to see wins. You want to see maximum effort. I get you. For these veterans, they just want to get to the start of the NHL season, and especially a guy like Patrik Laine, who had his knee blown out last year. He just wants to get to the regular season without any issues. David Reinbacher was the same way, and believe you me, that man was frustrated on Thursday. So when I say they just don't want trouble, they just want to get to it, it's the guys that have something to win, jobs to win, that need to be the guys that take it to another level. Yeah. It's not the veterans. And so like, that's why I never make full objection style, like opinions on one or two preseason games. Fair. Talk to me end of October. If Patrik Laine is still playing.
Oh, Patrik Laine is still playing. Marco is frozen. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see if Marco can unfreeze himself here for a second. At least he didn't pause with a goofy looking face, because I really wanted to get to this question about who's Montreal's best defenseman right now. And there's a lot of love for Lane Hutson, obviously. But if Marco was here, I would debate him today. That for me, it's Caden Goalie in terms of who's the best defenseman, who's the most talented defenseman on the Montreal Canadiens. The answer there is Lane Hutson. Marco.
Yes, sir.
We got you. Good. I think it's all good, brother. It happens. It's a part of the live show. I've been in radio for a long time. I get how live broadcasts work. I think Caden Goalie is the Montreal Canadiens' best defenseman today. Most talented defenseman is Lane Hutson. And hear me out for 1 second, right? Just so I can make my case why I like Caden Goalie. The injuries are one thing, right? But he played on average about 90 seconds less per game than Lane Hutson. Now, the points, there's no arguing the points. The points are the points are the points. But shame on the broadcasters when they talked about Lane Hutson gets hit a lot. As Mark Dumont pointed out on Twitter, He actually doesn't. Lane Hutson is exceptional at avoiding a ton of body contact. But in terms of all-around defenseman, playing the position, being a threat, playing, the opponent's best forwards on a night-by-night basis, for me, Kaiden Guhle is the best defenseman on the Montreal Canadiens. Who would you nominate as the Habs' best defenseman, Marco, right now?
Lane Hutson. I don't think Kaiden Guhle, first of all, one of the best abilities in hockey is availability.
All day.
And I just feel like
no doubt.
If we're going to talk about Kaiden Guhle, we also have to talk about how often is he in the lineup.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
The injuries
the problem.
and the risk in that and so on and so forth. So to me, dependability also factors into what is better. And I feel like Lane Hutson, despite his diminutive size, more dependable. His offense is far better than Guhle's defense.
Yeah.
And his defense is better than Guhle's offense. And so if you balance those out together, he to me is number one. And I know it hasn't looked it yet, but believe you me, once he gets settled, I feel like Dobson is number two. And then you have Kaiden Guhle. And then you got to hope to find a legitimate number four behind them, which the Canadians assume is going to be David Reinbacher should he stay healthy.
No kidding.
And there's your hierarchy.
No kidding. Hey, let us know in the comments. You guys excited about a live show with D'Amico and Star coming to McLean's Pub on Peel? It's your home for Montreal Canadiens action, home or away. Outstanding service. There's not a hot sauce that's hot enough that Marco D'Amico at least won't try. You should have been with us at lunch the other day. Marco gets the chicken tenders. He's like, give me the hottest hot sauce you have. Like the waitress looked at him like cockeyed, like, are you sure, Playboy? Are you sure that's the way you want to go? But that's the way he went. You guys stoked to come see us? We got prizes, ticket giveaways, gift certificates to hand out. We're very much looking forward to our live show at McLean's Pub starting in October. It's going to be great. Let us know in the comments. We'd love to see you there. We'd love to get as many people there as possible. And you're going to get a chance to go see a game live at the Bell Center in a future date. People wondering if the hot sauce got you frozen or not.
No, I wish.
He's over it.
I wish. No, I'm a hot sauce guy, guys. So,
I could tell.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily going to freeze me so much as it's going to heat me up.
Thanks as always to our sponsors at cheapesttshirts.ca, McLean's Pub, and littlebearonline.com. I think we have a date scheduled for October 22nd. The Montreal Canadiens play the Calgary Flames. And Marco and I will be there. And like I said, I really hope to see a lot of you there on game day against Calgary. That's the plan right now. Marco D'Amico, we've got a lot of content coming up on the channel this week. We're going to talk about Alex Zurofsky's KHL debut and the future. Marco, I'm going to rub Marco's head and try to predict the future for Alex Zurofsky, who again made his KHL debut. We'll talk about the surplus of talent on the wing and some decisions for management and waivers. Marco told you in this episode about Sean Farrell and some concern there. If they're going to send him down, he's going to have to clear waivers. And what about Capo Kakinen? They send him down, he's going to have to clear waivers too. So we're going to dive deep on those topics and more on the channel. So look forward to that. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Marco D'Amico, thanks. A pleasure to be back on our live show as we get closer to a new regular season. We've got more planned up our sleeves and more changes coming to it. I really think you're going to like it. Marco, thanks as always. Enjoy the Ryder Cup. Enjoy the National Football League. Enjoy your family. And we'll see you later.
See you guys. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. And we'll be bringing you some good news throughout the week.
Let's go.